going to start off with is the Agile versus certainty mindset. So if we have a look at some of our challenges within the current mindset of stakeholders in business and the current mindset of change practitioners, what we're finding is that as we're implementing Agile and as we're doing change management to support Agile, there is lack of stakeholder buy-in to being Agile. And we're talking about the broader organization. We're talking about business stakeholders who like the idea of being Agile, but then when it comes to the crunch and they realize that Agile means a different way of working, it comes with uncertainty, then suddenly there's pushback. Okay? I see some heads nodding. I think a few of us can relate to that. In addition to that, we've also got stakeholders deferring back to waterfall, which is, but I want a plan. I want certainty. I want to know what's coming. Tell me what, when, how, who. Tell me all of the milestones, and I want to know all of that up front. Then we've also got change practitioners that want to stay in their comfort zone doing change management the way that they've always done it. All right. So what I'd like to do is actually ask our panel members for some of their experience with this. And Rodney, to start off with you, please. And if you can just share with us if you've had experiences with stakeholders where they're sort of not shifting towards this Agile mindset. Have you had any challenges with that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Debbie. As practitioners or facilitators of change, we tend to assume that when, as an organization, we say we're pursuing Agile, everyone understands that. So you take it as a given that we're going Agile and everyone is aware of that. Okay. That is one thing that I've learned, that it's not the case. What ought to happen is to say to the leadership of the organization, what are the implications of pursuing Agile? You cannot focus on running Agile in projects, yet the entire organization is strictly waterfall. That is a very strong and inherent contradiction. What I've learned, David, to your point as well, was to spend a bit of time working with the senior guys and say to the CFO, please stop coming to our meetings to ask us when are we landing this damn thing. You will say, I want to know when are you landing this thing, what are going to be the costs, and what are going to be the benefits. Okay. That is a waterfall CFO. I'm sure most of you or some of you have had to deal with such people. Okay. Now, with regard to change practitioners themselves, I've also noted that most of our fellow practitioners are struggling with change. I'm talking about change managers. Because we've been so trained to be waterfall in everything we think and do, we're struggling to detox waterfall out of our system. Each time we have to do something, where is the plan? Where is the template? Where are those tool sets? With Agile, as Debbie has indicated, it should come intuitively. You need to be right there when things happen. You cannot be sitting somewhere in the corner and you're planning yourself. Okay. So those are some of the challenges that I've picked up as well. Now, with regard to how we manage the change process, I think we need to let go. We're so used to wanting to take control of everything. We plan, change impact assessment, this and that and that. And I've learned over these past few years to say, you know what, allow the users to take charge of the process. Because you're there to facilitate, as Debbie just said, now we're not there to manage it. So those are some of the experiences that I've picked up. And I had to learn that myself, to let go of what I've known about waterfall for so many years and begin to learn something new. And the journey is continuing, by the way. So those were some of the challenges,
fantastic.
Debbie.
And Rodney, you just mentioned this example of a CFO coming into the meeting wanting to understand what is the budget, wanting such clarity. So I think we've all been faced with that. And I think the challenge is, how do we respond to that? So how did you respond to that?
We had a very good product owner, and the CFO was saying, guys, we've spent X amount thus far. You still have a couple of months to finish this thing. We may not have money for that. And I brought in my product owner to say, let's spend time with the CFO to make him understand that the reason why we're taking a bit of time is because we watched a press release of the competition who are going to be releasing a product in the market. We looked at that product and say, what are the gaps in it? We then had to engage our users to identify new requirements, which we put into our backlog, into our sprints, and we said to ourselves, by the time they've launched their product, ours is going to be at least 6 to 12 months ahead. In other words, we captured new requirements to leapfrog what they were launching at the time. And once you talk money to a CFO, you've got them. So the product owner indicated to say, look here, we are in a battle here. We are being competitive. That is why we're allowing them to launch their product first. Ours will be, the best in the market in 6 months' time. So it's also about how you use them as the C-suite, people to speak the same language. And I can tell you now that CFO is one of our strongest supporters. Now he was saying he wants everybody in the company to be trained on Agile. So that is one example of where you can have a person who is so anti-Agile because they know little about it. You remember what I said earlier on? We assume that they understand the implications of Agile once you choose to pursue that. That is what I've experienced to be.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. I think there's quite a few key points that have come through there, which is staying really close to your stakeholders, so having that relationship with the product owner, staying really close to your C-suite executives to make sure that you can have those robust conversations with them. And very importantly, the third thing is influencing the business around Agile training for people that are not inside the Agile teams, that aren't the developers or Scrum Masters, etc. And we're definitely seeing a shift towards that, because if people understand Agile as a methodology, of course that will help the organizations grow. How many of you have actually been on Agile training? Fantastic. Because I think as change practitioners, that is really important, is also upskilling yourselves on being familiar with Agile, the Agile method and Agile approach. Thank you very much for that, Rodney. Very interesting. Linda, from your side, can you share any examples with us? And I think it's quite apt considering how many people are sitting in between Waterfall and Agile in the auditorium. Is any examples you can share with us excuse me, from shifting from Waterfall to Agile, and how you manage change when you're caught in between both?
Yeah, thanks, Deb. So we'd been working on a Office 365 implementation for one of the banks, and we'd been spent about 6 months going through a pilot phase of trying to get all of the nuts and bolts, the technical bits and pieces of the deployment working so that we could look at large-scale rollout. And after 6 months' time, we were sitting with about 200 of 9,000 licenses deployed. And you can just imagine that wasn't looking good. So we started looking at some of the challenges that we were having, and what we were realizing is that because there's so many different technical teams that need to be involved in the success of the overall solution, whenever there was an issue with the deployment, we had to run to like these 6 or 7 different teams. And, the one person said, no, it must be networks. And the other team was going, oh, no, it's definitely the SCCM team. And we just were struggling to make progress. So we spent about 6 weeks re-looking at the structure of the project. We made sure that we brought in all the right people. We knew that we had a bulletproof a plan in place, and we went to Steerco, and we presented to Steerco, and we knew that we were going to get the thumbs up. And in Steerco, our sponsor at the time, who had just attended an Agile seminar, turned around and said, no, he hates the idea, we're going to go Agile. I was like, what? Right? I've just spent like 6 weeks getting to this point. What do you mean we're going Agile? And for most of the people on the team, and this was quite a while ago, I think it was about 5 years ago, for most of us, Agile, we'd never heard of Agile before. It was really, really new, and we had no idea what it meant. So we had to kind of regroup as a team and go, we know that we don't know a lot about Agile, but if we're going to make this work, what does it look like? So we did our own research, we looked at the team, and we thought, how do we not lose the work that we've done? We still need these technical stakeholders that we've pulled together. It's just going to look different structurally. So let's assemble our squad. Let's look at co-location. Let's look at implementing our Kanban boards, etc. And what was really cool from a change management perspective is, and I think one of the mindsets I had to get over was to say, I can no longer say for certainty that this is how things are going to work. I'm going to have to go on this journey the same as the rest of the team. And there was huge learnings, and I had to get over the need to be right, and I had to go, you know what, I'm going to make mistakes, and for each mistake that I make, we can adapt, and we can then look at our next sprint. I think some of the benefits that we found is that the having those daily stand-ups, having all of these technical stakeholders in the room, we were actually able to resolve a lot of the technical challenges that we'd been dealing with because we were all there. Our retrospectives were really, really valuable. So we were constantly making changes to our sprints. And we really started to see fantastic progress as a team through this journey. I will not say that we were a pure Agile team. We were not. And our stakeholder communities were also not, on that same page at all. But we did the best with what we had at that time. And we just had to be okay with the fact that it was Agile. Let's just take the best that we can from both worlds and make it work. So it was quite an interesting experience. But I can tell you at that time of the steerco, I was like a very unhappy change manager. I was like, no, resist.
Yeah, the irony of being change facilitators, yet we ourselves sometimes resist change. Hey?
Yeah.
But Linda, thank you very much for that learning. And I think there's a couple of things coming out of that, which is that sometimes the decision to move from waterfall to Agile is made at an executive level. It's made for strategic reasons. But understanding what the full impact is across the organization isn't often fully considered. So things like the impact to policies, to governance, to financial reporting, etc., all play a part. And that's where we as the change management fraternity get resistance because, we're driving the Agile way of work and the Agile way of responding to change, but the organization itself hasn't changed.
And
yes?
I think just one thing that was also really valuable for me is, we'd really struggled with the members of our squad prior to them coming on board. We had so much passive-aggressive resistance. And from a change management perspective, the management of those stakeholders became so much easier having them as part of the squad because we were now really working as a unified team as opposed to individual stakeholders based at 7 different buildings.
Yes.
So that was also very
Yes.
valuable for us.
Yes, very
Made
good.
my life a lot easier.
And we know from a psychology perspective, proximity is really key
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Thank you for that. What I'd like to do is just ask you to have a look at your own circumstances. Have you had any challenges around stakeholder mindsets and what it means to be agile? So have you had challenges with that? So what we're seeing is that there's definitely challenges around agile mindsets. Yeah, we're definitely seeing that. Is that coming from your business stakeholders or from change practitioners? Anybody in the room? Business stakeholders, okay. Yeah, we're also finding the same, that primarily from business stakeholders because they aren't 100% sure about what this means. And then when they get there, they're not sure that they like what it means. All right, so thank you very much for that feedback. So what I'd like to ask is, do you have any questions for the panel members on agile mindsets and shifting from the traditional waterfall mindset to the agile mindset? Or anything you'd like to share around your own learnings?
Nee, you mentioned in your experience having the change assessments done, all the traditional stuff done. How did you manage the requirement to have a strategy and a plan that's signed off in order to carry on with the project?
So if I understand your question well, you're saying, how did we manage to stop the waterfall approach into resolving the issues that were facing us? Okay. If I may share one example with the team here. You know, we often talk about change impact assessment. And one of my business leaders said, you know what, the thing about you change people, you know, you like using words, change impact this, change impact that. In the current environment of job losses, retrenchments, etc., when you talk about the impact, to some people, they might be thinking they are likely candidates for exit, isn't it? Okay. And I said to myself, you know what, let me put aside my change impact assessment spreadsheet, which had about 4 pages in it. I then said, come on guys, let's have a session. I didn't say it was a change impact assessment workshop. I said, let's look at how we can make this thing work for us, to the users. And the second thing that I used, I said, okay, you know, I looked at the profile of the users, fairly young people, okay, new generation, so to speak. I said, I'm not going to do the usual way of looking at your as is and your document, etc., etc. I made a few printouts of the, you know, the emojis, the signs, thumbs up, thumbs down, question mark, cool, etc. I then allowed the users to map their journey in terms of the impact on what they perceived as going to be at that point in time. What I've learned is that they were so excited about standing up, putting those emojis on the wall to say, that is cool, this is not, etc., etc. And I remember one of the seniors was not entirely impressed with the process. But at the end, he realized that in one session, we managed to achieve a lot of things. We managed to map out the learning requirements. And who did that? It was the users. Okay. We had templates, we had processes, and I was given a change strategy, which I put aside. Okay, a waterfall one, by the way. Okay. So I think the approach was to say, okay, what are the things that we need to stop doing and start doing? Stopping was to look at how we plan. We spend too much time planning. You know, with Agile, change, you know, evolves, emerges right in front of you. You cannot plan for it for that long. But having your sponsor on board is very important. That person, preferably if they're a product owner because they carry, you know, that respect in the organization, and also because they've got a lot of money behind that, have them on your side. They will clear the way for you. And he was saying to me, for the first time, he saw change management in action, not in templates. Okay, so the plan was put aside deliberately, but the learning was, let's allow the users to determine the pace, the direction of the whole change process. And they owned it. In other words, the what's in it for me was there for everyone to see, without us having to convince them through the town halls presentations of what's good for them, what's good for the organization. We're helping them to create a journey for themselves, not for them. I hope that answered your question.
Excellent feedback, and just what a fantastic quote that is. Change management in action, not change management in templates. So thank you for that. Very insightful, and I think also very practical, you know, things that we can certainly take back with us and apply. Linda?
I think also one of the things that we started to look at doing is doing living documents for strategies and for plans. So instead of it being, well, this is the strategy, to say, well, at this point in time, this is what our strategy is looking like, but we know that it's subject to evolution as we evolve and as our product or whatever it is that we're delivering evolves. So it's no longer, you know, this perfect document at one point in time. It's a live document that grows as we grow.
100%. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Does anybody else have any questions that they'd like to ask? Yes.
So I think this is for anybody on the panel. It's really around how do you actually change a challenge of changing a stakeholder's mindset from waterfall to agile? What are the things that can be done from your experience? How have you managed to do that?
All right, great question. Thank you.
So perhaps I can
Quibus,
respond
thank
on
you.
this particular one. I think, it's, and I want to call it the word educate. It's not only needed in a household. It is needed in an environment where we work. It is needed for us as a country at this point in time. So we need to spend time with people, talk through things. It's about conversing about it. It is about developing not just a sense of awareness, because, and I want to look at this whole thing from a customer perspective. If I want to be successful, I need to fully understand what's going on in your mind. And, what should we be doing in order to resolve something. So it is about developing a relationship with people. And I just want to flip-flop quickly back to where, during the first session, where we sit with a delivery organization, and I'm part of a program of 500 people on one program. There are other such programs also in play, through which we need to interact in order to come up against the delivery of a strategy, an overall organizational strategy. So it's making it very challenging. So from a program and a business perspective, you need to be absolutely on the same page. Because they're doing business, there's profit and loss, and they need to deliver against certain targets. So they don't have time to put their fingers and their minds into your world. But somehow, if you don't spend time with one another, and that sort of addresses our approach. Not a strategy, it's about an approach. We need to fully understand that, because I can offer you this, you need to be part of that. And it's a two-way street. So it's absolutely needed that we educate people to get onto the same page and the same understanding in terms of Agile.
And what we're seeing in the research, Quibus, thank you for that, and it speaks exactly to what you're saying, is that there is an increase in the frequency of engagement, okay, with stakeholders. A lot of it is less formal, so it's actually more informal. So it's constantly staying close to your stakeholders, engaging with them, but also immersing yourself in their environments. So one of the things that Quibus and his team have done very well that I've observed is, for example, they have set up a war room, and in their war room, they actually engage on an ongoing basis with users from the business. So they're constantly keeping engaged with them, keeping involved with them, and the business is appreciating that because everything is done from the business's perspective. Okay, so that's really helping with shifting that mindset towards being more agile. Okay, thank you for that question. Rodney?
Yes, if I may add to that, Debbie, I think what's also important, business leaders put a lot of money behind these projects. They don't want to hear about Agile, they want to see Agile, producing what they want. So in one of the projects that I'm involved in, we agreed that, okay, let's look at the projected go-live date as per our waterfall plan. It was going to be 18 months down the line. We then said, please attend our stand-up meetings and other, Scrum ceremonies. Within a month and a half, we're able to have this minimum viable product, a demo, which they would not have seen until month 18. Okay. 3 weeks later as well, we came up with a very practical demo where they actually saw how the transition was taking place. Okay. So we're able even to capture the emerging requirements, not to lock the development until month 18 and press that big button as we're going live. We said to them, come and see, change happening. And that's what convinced them, because they said, okay, from now on, please, we're going to be part of these stand-up meetings, but also where you have problems, let us know, we'll address those. So for me, educating them is one thing which is important, but demonstrating the value of what we can get out of Agile is important, because the purpose is not to be Agile, but to use Agile to boost the organizational, success.
True.
Very good. Yes, Brett, thank you. We'll just wait for the mic to get to you. Brett.
So I'm listening to you guys, and it's very much how we're dealing with stakeholders that are business stakeholders that are struggling to come on board with Agile and the benefits and how we're going to run that process. But how do you get around where you've got project managers or a PMO office that is very much still of the old mindset of doing waterfall?
Good.
So business might be on board and change management might be on board, as in organizational change, but your PMO and your project managers still want to do it the old way. How do you get over that
Fantastic.
challenge?
Fantastic question, because I think all of us can say that we've seen that in play as well. So panel members, Quibus?
Yes, I would love to answer this particular one. It all depends on the composition of who's involved in the program. And, like you're saying, the change manager might be on board and the business is on board. And I'm working on a big digital program at the moment. So there's a strong GT or group technology dominance in this particular thing. And it's also, they in the past sort of protected themselves because they got many hidings before as a result of not delivering. So we need to break down the walls, and because they've painted themselves into a rule-protected environment to become more agile. So I want to go back to educate. As much as we want to educate business, we need to get people in our group technology environment also on board, to be part of an integrated delivery team, and it's all about new roles. Your new role is to be collaborative of nature. You need to engage with people. So there's a lot of change management skills woven into the different roles to be collaborative. It's also roles that needs to be interchangeable. You're not going to be the change manager all the time. You need to pull your finger and do some analysis in order to get information out. You need to help and assist the Scrum Master because there's people involved in this particular environment. Whenever we're talking about dependencies in our program, dependencies is what I need from you and what you need from me. We need to be open-minded and really open in our communication with one another in order to create the success as a cumulative. So I fully agree. There's lots of work to be done still in helping our fellow colleagues in different roles to be fully aligned with the Agile principle and how can we get together to a point of collaboration.
And I think it's
Thank you,
also
Quibus.
a case of, people not understanding what this change looks like. So you're telling us that you want to be agile. What does that mean? Have you actually broken down, as Quibus was saying, the practical aspects of the way that my day-to-day function is going to change? And one of the things that we've seen from a change management perspective is that there's always been literature around the agile, the new agile team and the new way of working. But what's often missing is there's no change manager role there. So I've also been finding that people aren't necessarily being resistant. They actually just don't know what it looks like. So we have a responsibility as the change fraternity to go, how do we change manage and change facilitate this transition from a waterfall to an agile methodology, and how does it align with our strategy? How does it allow us to be more competitive, client-centric, etc.? And that's often what's missing.
And Rodney, do you want to add to that?
Yes, just the last point. I think Quibus has already touched on that one. I joined one team, and from day one, I could see, real conflict between the Agile coach and the project manager. I think with Waterfall, as we know, project managers only focus on three things: the triple constraint, the scope, the budget, and the timing. Okay. And the Agile coach was saying, guys, that we know, but let's make sure that we focus on what we have to deliver. And I said in that meeting, I realized that perhaps there was no clear unpacking of their roles from the very beginning. Okay. I suggested a 2-hour session where we looked at, guys, you as a project manager, what is it that you're going to be doing to support this team going forward? The coach is here to make sure that the Scrum team focus on what they should be delivering. So I think the unpacking of roles, we cannot underestimate that. Okay, it's so important. But it goes further than that. If people's day jobs are not refreshed to include what Agile means on a day-to-day basis, you'll have a struggle. If your performance management process, to my HR colleagues if they're here, is not tied into making sure that these new roles which are emerging are somehow reinforced by HR process, people won't pay much attention to that. So to me, that conflict was an indication that as a change person, I needed to step in and assist. But I also had one-on-ones with the coach and the project manager on the side. And with time, the conflict kind of disappeared. And we're all working towards the same goal. So it is a process of educating them. But as change people, as Dina indicated, we need to be right there when things happen and take the lead instead of being told to assist with the typical change activities.
Spot on. Thank you very much for that feedback. Yes? And we also have at the back, please. So Ofer?
Thanks. To comment from my side, as a person coming from an agile company or a company who is aiming to be agile, it's just different of challenges of conducting a change process in an agile company. So it's just a different challenge, but it's still a challenge. So even it's not just in a waterfall company, so just different challenges. That's one thing. And second, there is not big contradiction between project management, the standard project management, and being or driving a change processes. You just need to have the dialogue, how to run it better together, and we're doing it in our project as well, and it runs good.
Yes, very good. And I think dialogue is so critical. And again, it always comes back to that the stakeholder, regardless of whether it's somebody in a project team, with traditional PMO practices, somebody in an agile team, somebody from business, somebody from HR, it is about dialogue. So thank you very much for that, Ofer. And that is about helping organizations to be agile. And that's part of the shift that we need to make as change managers. Thank you, Ofer.
No, so the question actually is, I just want to quickly and very briefly tell a story and then to say if that rings true for you, because we're in a situation, I work in the retail sector, the largest retailer, non-food retailer in South Africa, with our problems at the moment.
Yes.
I'm situated, I work for the IT organization in the PDO. The PDO is for IT driving the implementation of Agile, which left me in a situation where we kind of have to find our way from a change management approach, because the technology component of it is walking ahead. We've created all the necessary things that helps people make that mindset change. There's a Scrum room, we have our boards, the Kanban boards. We're using Kanban and Scrum methodologies. Our program managers are all certified Agile practitioners. We've done all that. We've done awareness workshops with the people in IT. In retail, the retail business don't want to do Agile because it's too structured. If they can work even less structured than Agile, it's fine. So from that perspective, it's fine, although they have a problem in understanding a minimum viable product. If they want it Agile, they want it in 2 weeks' time, but everything. Because they have socks to sell.
Yes.
So in an IT environment, we started that change. But I just wanted to know from a change perspective, because the concepts of not having templates, not having documents, not having plans, it's that pendulum thing where it's very hard to move from an environment where people expect certain things, and I'm very uncomfortable to just work with a change as it happens, because it's the same as we want to build a boat, a big passenger boat, but we're not going to tell you we're now putting in deck 1. You somehow need to still create the picture of where we are going. So what we were thinking of is using the user story process right up front, because with the user stories, you get a very nice view of what you want to achieve with this program. Still having a document, but very, it's not as detailed, it's not as long, it's not as involved, but you do use that to create that kind of awareness of what we're going to do. And then to almost have a very limited change impact, whether you call it change impact or how we want to make it work, or we work with an environment where we have 1,500 stores in something like 14 countries. So it's not as easy as getting people together. We do do that, but it's difficult. So creating limited change impacts then per sprint. And sometimes you'll have different sprints. They don't all go into production necessarily at the end of a sprint. You'll have minimal MVP, minimal viable product at the end of the third sprint, for example. So that allows you to plan, to know that you need to have some training ready at the end of sprint 3 so that people can start using that. Does that ring or does that resonate? Because I'm not sure if I'm understanding our role correctly and if that is something that can work.
And thank you so much, first of all, for sharing your context with us, because it's very interesting to hear that in some instances, there's resistance to Agile because it is seen as being too structured, okay? So that's a very interesting take-home for us on that. But I think over to Querbus, let's just get some feedback from him.
Ariane, I can identify with your situation 100%. So you're absolutely on the right track at this point in time. I think, from time to time, when you're talking about some sort of documentation, you don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater here. So because it goes about the maturity of the organization at different points in time, and we need to be able to read the landscape 100%. And, from a customer perspective, but also in terms of who's delivering against, the requirements of the organization. And then it goes to me, if we do our planning properly, and I'm talking about typical safe agile program increment planning, we need to have a good grasp in terms of which are the user stories, because that's your first impression of what the minimum viable product or series of minimum viable products will be. And quite often you can't just implement this one building block. It's dependent on another and it's dependent on another to make up a release of a couple of minimum viable products to get to a point where we deliver something into business. So I think what is rather challenging in your world is the fact that your front end is highly agile and that they're really pushing for quicker delivery, which is not always possible from a technology perspective. So we need to get to a point where we need to blend, the expectation on the one side with the delivery capability of the other. So from my point of view, I think you're in good space where you are at the moment.
Thank you for that, Querbus. Rodney?
Yes. If I may add, I think you mentioned something very important. You said the technical guys are kind of, ahead of everybody. I think as change practitioners, here's our new challenge. It's not about releasing at all times. Remember, you need to pace your release and what the users can take at that point in time. So in other words, as a change person, you need to look at the release plan and say, how much of this is going to be too much? Because if every second week or every third week there's a release, there's a risk of change fatigue. People can only take this much at a point in time. So try to strike a balance between how we chain the technology and how we can deploy it. So to Kova's point, I think where you have that lack of integration, as a change person, you need somehow to help to dictate that process, because you will have very unhappy users. Because every second week there's something coming in and you'll have fatigue. And guess what? It will just crash. So I think that's one thing you need to look at as well.
Very good. Thank you for that feedback.
Can I just quickly chip in on something else? And quite often, and I spoke about complexity of your program, the complexity of your landscape, the complexity of the immediate program that you were working in. So, and we know, and this is the banking sector, we're sitting with legacy worlds of note. Some of the stuff that we don't know what to do with. You know, and all of a sudden you need to move to a new digital platform, and it's got to be there for our clients, and they need to be able to transact like this. Unbelievable expectation. But, you know, and it's a definitive choice that you need to make. Either you do the Bank Zero thing, or the discovery thing, or the time thing, and you start off with a new digital platform, and you can run Agile, and you can run wild with it. On the other side, we are dealing with a transitioning or an evolution from that old legacy environment to a new digital platform. So you need to be cognizant of where you're coming from and what you would like to achieve.
Yes.
So, and it is not just a 1, 2, 3 step change and we're there. So I think the challenges, those kind of challenges will contribute to the kind of complexity in terms of how quick you will be able to deliver against certain things. So we've dished up for ourselves in many ways, but we need to handle it in the most sensible way in order to accomplish something.
Very
So
good.
I just wanted to ask
Yes.
on that point, do you think that there's any limitations to Agile? So for example, Agile is much easier if you're building on an existing platform, but if you're replacing a whole system, does it work as well as waterfall?
So if I can respond to that.
Thank you, Mish.
So, and most of you have been through the SAFe Agile methodology, where we're talking about different levels of complexity, and I call it trains. So our typical small project, it's a 12-week thing, we turn it around, you know, we make a choice at some point in time whether you're going to pursue with it, whether you're going to kick it into touch, or whether you're going to implement it. And after 12 weeks, you could be there with a minimum viable product, and it's implemented in the organization. I call it fairly simple. So the different layers of complexity increases over time. So the middle one may be a little bit more challenging but doable. But I'm talking about in our particular environment about the really complex stuff. So is Agile the best thing for this particular case? I think we are busy with Fragile at this point in time. So, and if I'm talking about Fragile, I'm talking from a very honest perspective. So we haven't grown into the level of maturity where we can easily run all of those, top level stuff.
And
So-
Quibus, it is also about learning as we go. So Mish, it's a very good question, because I think there is still some learning that's taking place around when there's large-scale, complex projects where you are replacing massive existing legacy systems with new systems. There's a lot of complexity in that. Is Agile the best way to go? Well, we think it is, but let's see what we say in 2 years' time, you know? So just in summary, thank you for that. Just in summary, having a look at the shift towards the Agile mindset, there's 2 key things to focus on. The first thing is that we need to be doing change management on being Agile. So being Agile across the organization, across all different types of stakeholders, as well as implementing Agile when doing Agile. So it's making sure that we are preparing the organization, we're preparing stakeholders for that Agile mind shift. And we're also engaging with stakeholders on an ongoing basis. So most of us will probably find ourselves in the second half where a lot of us are doing change management for an Agile type project. But we have limitations around driving Agile across the organization. And that's something that we need to be speaking to executives about, to say, we've got to set ourselves up as Agile organizations. It's not just about Agile for the dev teams. It's about being Agile in HR, being Agile in some of the shared services functions. Let's take an example of at one of our clients, the onboarding process to get a new person in can take up to 2 months to get somebody a laptop and an access card. but we've got agile dev teams, you know, so the two is completely contradictory. Yeah, so I can see some smiles there, but we've got to make sure that as an organization, we're setting ourselves up to be agile.